big part of my clinical population or the people that I work with are veterans, particularly Vietnam era veterans. They've killed people. I don't know how else to say it. They have done some pretty abhorrent things by most people's standards, and they don't really want to be able to talk about some of these things, especially when it was maybe not their best moment, or they did something that might have been illegal or wrong. And I get to tell them, like, my bar is pretty high for that. And I think they get it when I was like, no, I worked with psychopaths for 2 years. Like, it's pretty hard to move my needle on, oh, that's so morally irreprehensible. How dare you?
Hello. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm here with Dr. Edward Perin, psychologist and somebody who I came in contact with through the world of X, or Twitter, formerly known as. And so, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I watched your video on Gestalt therapy earlier. I think you've got some great stuff. I love to hear more about what you think.
Oh, absolutely. So for those who may not know you, how would you describe the work you do in present day, and the approach you take as a psychologist?
Okay, well, I guess a lot of people do hear the word therapist thrown around a lot. There are many different types of therapists. So I am a psychologist. My license is to practice psychology. That is usually kind of a balance between research and psychotherapy practice. I am much more passionate about the psychotherapy side. I get kind of bored putting numbers into Excel spreadsheets and running, complicated equations. But I love the interpersonal nature. So right now, I am running an online private therapy practice through. I'm licensed in the great state of Ohio, but there is license parity in 42 states currently through the PsyPact, or the Psychological Interjurisdictional Compact. So I've really been enjoying breaking new ground. This is relatively new in the field of psychology. Normally, your license just limits you to your own state, and so
Oh,
we're
okay.
really feeling this out for the first time in the United States. Most countries have a national license. The United States is weird. We have
Of course
state
we are.
licenses.
Right. Okay. That's interesting, because I know that counseling, which is my profession, they're working on getting the counseling compact, and they're trying to get all of the different
I
states
hear
on
it's not
board with
going
that.
very well.
Well, I guess there's all sorts of bureaucracy and what
Oh,
have you.
California. We're going to have to pry California's cooperation out of their cold dead hands, because they have a state accreditation for their like state psychologists, and the American
Mm.
Psychological Association's like, no, we accept the American Psychological Association. We don't accept the Californian Psychological Association. And California says,
Oh,
well, then we're not going to join unless you accept all of our psychologists.
I see. Yeah, so there's a bit of the politicking in that
Uh,
involved, for sure.
more than some.
Yes. So you lean into the definitely the patient facing, the set in the session work, and your practice leans heavily into depth depth psychology, depth psychotherapy. Is that fair to
Uh,
say?
that is the kind of terminology that I like to use. I'll use depth therapy or developmental therapy. My tradition is in what is the $20 word is psychodynamics, which is the scientific study of the independence and interdependence of psychological variables at different levels of awareness. But I'm very interested in other techniques, other approaches that have demonstrated potent effects. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that drew me to your video on Gestalt psychotherapy is I consider Gestalt psychotherapy one of the more potent approaches to psychotherapy. And so I want to study its potency and think about how I can integrate those into more of my psychodynamic practice. It's like empty chair technique, for example. I
Yes.
probably am I'm probably one of the better empty chair technique practitioners out there who would call himself more psychodynamic than Gestalt.
Yeah. So you must have found it impactful in your work. And by the way, I have too. It's actually kind of amazing. When I first tried it, I was like, "Oh wow, this is this is moving for people. This you could really get somewhere with people with
Potent.
that.
It is
Yeah,
so
potent.
potent.
Yes.
It is not an approach for people who are uncomfortable with affect. And I know that sounds silly to say for therapists, but there are a lot of therapists. If someone's
Mm-hmm.
crying in the room, they're gonna act like, spiders are have entered.
Yes.
That this isn't a good approach for them because there will be tears, there will be screaming, there will be,
Mm-hmm.
connection with some deep psychological processes.
And you've got to be prepared to sit in that presence with throughout that, and that's yeah, not for the faint of heart,
Oh
as they
gosh,
say.
I actually had cops called on me. We had this was in a
Really?
hospital environment, but we had actual like armed police, not security, enter the room while we were doing this. And I just folded it in. Hey, look, they're here to rescue you. Come on, guys, let's go. And we folded that into the kind of the empty chair drama, and it ended up
Oh,
being very powerful because no one had ever supported them, or we were going through more of a traumatic drama
yeah.
thing in the moment. So like it
Oh,
was like
wow.
they're here to we call this a surplus reality. Like this is what could have happened if somebody actually cared or was there. And one of the best moments of my life. But yeah, the screaming
Oh,
the
wow.
screaming caught the attention of some people.
That's what got it. I see. I see.
Yeah.
So you bring up an interesting. You improvised that moment.
Oh,
I mean, it's not like
that,
you planned for the cops to come in. And this gets me to something I've been really thinking about is treating therapy as is an improvisation. It's
mhm.
really what do you think about that? Because I feel like, you know, yes, we're very scientific, but I just feel like the nature of the therapy is I just feel like every moment is it just is there's so many options to where you can improvise, and the clients have all these therapeutic openings that
Oh
we can
yeah.
take. And I don't know, what do you think about like viewing therapy in like an improvised way?
Oh, I could talk for an entire hour on sort of the parallel process of things like improv and comedy, what I would call more of the art of psychotherapy, because there is an art and a science to it.
Mm,
Like we understand the science, but how do you apply the science? Sometimes you have to fold stuff in. You can't prepare for police officers coming into the session. You have to fold it in. You have to
yeah.
yes and it. I
Yes.
use the terminology creativity and spontaneity.
Mm-hmm.
Every
Mm-hmm.
session of psychotherapy is a creativity test and a spontaneity test.
Yes.
Uh, and that's why I'm typically not terribly rigid in the beginning of the session. Any of my patients might be able to say this if they're watching this, they might get a laugh out of this. But I don't really care how the session starts. We could be talking about the weather. We could be talking
Mm-hmm.
about current events. But what we're really doing is we're orbiting the periphery of something. And we
Yes.
could be talking about the weather. Oh, it's rainy. It's rainy. Yeah, it reminds me of, when I was a kid. Oh, you did? Let's go there, right? We
Mm-hmm.
go from the periphery to the core. And it's usually about 10, 15 minutes into the therapy session. There's going to be a direct route. Before we know it, we're crying. We're talking about our childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the potency. We're doing the work. We're having the
Yes.
encounter.
Yes. No, I think that's so. I like that. I like that. Almost like you're circling and you're circling and you're getting a little closer every spiral, every turnaround, and that's also why I like Gestalt, because I think it really is very that present focused, and it also has that
Mhm.
improvised whatever the client's always kind of giving you material to work with right here, right now,
Well,
and their
yeah.
past and their future is like right here, right, and you can really
And
feel
you don't
that.
know what they're doing. Hey, your foot's tapping. Oh, what your eyebrow raised in that
Mm,
particular way. If that facial expression you're making had words, what would it be saying?
mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no
Mm-hmm.
way to prepare for that in the session. In my personal experience, so I had a lot of my early training was in hospital environments. I spent a lot of time working in VA hospitals and community mental health hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
They do require a lot of what I call the manualized psychotherapy. It's more about reliability than efficaciousness,
Yeah.
and not a lot of improv in that. What I ended up finding is the more prepared I was for a session, the more likely they're going to come in with this brand new issue. Like my wife left me, my boss shot me, I have cancer. I
Uh-huh.
was like, well, we're not talking about session 3 of the Beck depression inventory or the CBT for depression today. Yeah.
Yes, I got you. That's interesting, right? And that's what I found that too. The moment you think you dial into certainty, the spontaneity just it totally knocks your plans out of the water, anyways. So that's
Hmm.
very interesting. So how long have you been a licensed psychotherapist?
Well, I moved to Ohio in 2021, tail end of 2020.
Hmm.
Got licensed in Ohio right away in 2021. Um, Before that, I'd been bouncing around a lot. So the training route for psychologists, we have what we call a practicum training experience, which
Hmm.
is an applied professional practice. We do that in conjunction with our graduate training. So we'll go into class some days. We'll be seeing patients under supervision, under very rigid supervision.
Hmm.
The next stage is sort of a pre-doctoral internship, which does require a national matching. So I was in graduate school in Chicago, but I'm matched in a tiny, tiny, highly rural town in Nebraska called Grand Island, Nebraska. Fun fact: neither Grand nor an island. Um,
Okay.
so after that is my postdoc. So you travel, you train, you study, you come back, you eventually land somewhere. I landed in Nevada, and then the
Mm.
pandemic happened.
Yes. How could we forget?
So yeah, it's funny how far away it is, and yet how recent it is in our collective memory.
Mm.
Uh, so a lot of difficulties kind of come in the licensing process. I don't want to get licensed in a state that's being shut down, and everything that we started doing online, I figured like this is kind of easy, and I can do it all myself. Why am I working for an agency if I could do this myself? Um,
Sure.
Brought me to Ohio, and that's where I wanted to plant my flag. That's where I was born. That's where I grew up. That's where I hung my
Oh,
shingle.
okay.
So it's kind of a
Okay.
roundabout way,
That's
but
a full. You did a little bit of a full circle there.
yeah, but the licensure route is a little bit more circuitous than the license itself, because then once you get the license itself, you are kind of stuck in your one little environment. So to long story short, I have been
Yeah.
licensed for 4 years now in the great state of Ohio.
Okay. But was it at least 4 years? Like since your first patient as a practicum student, was that like
Mhm.
the 4 years prior to? Was that is that
Oh
fair
no, that
or?
was 2013. I have been a therapist for
Oh,
12 years if we're including
okay. If
if
we're
we're
including
including
all
my
that,
training and experience. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes. I so psychology. Yeah. You guys got a much tougher route, and I respect the rigor that comes with that. Honestly.
I
And
actually had more when I applied for my postdoc. Actually, no, when I applied for my predoctoral internship, I think I had about 1,000 more direct clinical hours than most of my peers. So I
wow.
was I was the prettiest girl at the ball. Everyone wanted to dance with me. I got a lot of offers and where I could train, especially for my postdoc. I bid on
Right.
10 places. I got 10 offers. It was
Oh wow. And
it
is
was
that the
different.
matching? Is that the matching thing that you
Mhm.
said?
Oh, the postdoc also has a national matching thing. It's not every so you don't actually need a postdoc to get licensed. You just need a certain amount of hours. I wanted to
Okay.
go that extra distance because I got my postdoc at probably like the most rigid VA training center, the Bruce B. Carter Miami VA Hospital. It is a 12-story hospital on a giant campus through Jackson Hospital. It's a whole
Yeah.
campus with restaurants and
Oh
parks and everything,
wow.
but they work you hard. In fact, they called it a residency. I had to go on rounds with psychiatrists, and I there were 8 of us, and they made me the chief resident because I'm a bit of a workaholic.
And I can tell. I can see. I definitely understand that, and I can see that through just your online presence and what you're willing to put out there. So, did you always want to be a psychologist? What was your what was like 18-year-old Perin doing, and or what was he thinking in terms of a career, vocation, and all of that?
Mhm. Well, 18-year-old me did want to become a psychologist, but I gave up that dream for a while because you have to go to school for a very long time, and I wanted to make money. Actually, I graduated college into the big economic crash in 2008, where no one was hiring, and I was
Yes.
looking for jobs everywhere. And they would say, "Oh, you're too qualified," and I would tell them, "I will bang my head on this desk until I'm dumb enough to do this job. I need to pay my bills. Hire me." So I
Oh
joined the army,
wow.
and I went in. My brain was to kind of continue in a. I wanted to be an officer. I started developing this idea of a career. I gave my oath of commission. I trained to drive tanks. It was really cool, and then I broke my back.
Oh,
Uh,
in while you were serving.
yes. So, unfortunately, because I was branched in combat arms, a
Mm-hmm.
spinal injury um, got in the way of my contract,
Mm-hmm.
and I was put in a position where I had to renegotiate my contract. But what ends up happening in these situations is you don't actually choose your job; it's needs of the army, and I didn't want to
Sure.
gamble with that, so I decided to focus back my professional development on psychology. The benefit is that I walked out of the army with 6 years left of a valid secret, very good security clearance, and
Mm.
people wanted to pay money for what that offered, and so I was able to continue and focus on developing some more of that psychology psychotherapy acumen. I joined a research lab. I worked in shout out Dr. Eva Kimonis at the Louis de la Parte Mental Health Institute, second University of South Florida, #2 research university in the United States at the time. Did some amazing research. It paid this much money.
Really?
Yeah, so I had to work about 2 or 3 jobs to continue in
To
this
subsidize
field,
that.
essentially. So
Y-
I was able to make it work, but it was a process until getting into graduate school, and I would not, and I cannot stress this enough. I would not be a psychologist if it wasn't for Dr. Eva Kimonis of the Louis de la Parte Florida Mental
Did,
Health Institute.
did they take you kind of under their wing and
Oh
kind of
yeah.
and
Oh,
get you just into the
she did this one thing in her research lab, and if any researchers are watching this, I invite you to take a page from her book. But we had weekly team meetings that were just about the application process for graduate school. So what that would look like is one week we would do cover letters, and we would write a cover letter to a graduate program that we would want to be in. And we would
mm,
show up to our team meeting and we would pass our cover letters to the left, and we would just eviscerate our lab teammates, our assistants letters. And then the next week it would be maybe an essay question, or we would write a letter of recommendation for ourselves, and we would go through all of this. But throughout this process, we were also learning that this is what universities are asking for. This is what training programs are asking for.
mm.
This is sort of their evaluative process, and this is what makes a good letter. This is what makes a bad letter. And I was there for 2 years. So when I actually did put my applications for graduate school, I had a pretty solid foundation for my
Y-
application, thanks to her.
yes. Okay, so she really trained you up and I'm sure that made you resilient, even just the emotional aspect of giving your
Oh yeah.
work out, and that's very vulnerable to let somebody kind of shred up your work.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think so.
you know,
She's also incredibly talented. She's one of the world leaders in psychopathy. The callous and unemotional traits entered into the DSM-5 in 2013, and
yeah.
that was in no small part due to her. She is the one who really championed the development of callous and unemotional traits in the development of psychopathy in youth.
Huh. Okay.
Oh, I could talk
That's
about
that's
psychopathy and psychopaths all day.
yeah. That's that. What was there anything that does that inform your work to this day? Some of that knowledge on psychopathy,
Mhm.
does that
Oh yeah.
inform some of your work even in the present
Well,
day here?
I spent two years with psychopaths. Like
Yeah.
I
Was
spent 2 years interacting with them. So half of my job was research focused, half of my job was participant focused, and I loved the
oh
participation interaction so much that I told my mentor that I wanted to go into clinical psychotherapy, and she says, "Why not research? I'm training you to be a researcher." Uh,
I see.
there was a little bit of friction around that, but I genuinely loved that interaction. They're very charming psychopaths, and the ones who you think are great are the ones who end up being on the highest level of psychopathy, and the ones who you think are maybe like jerks, they're not, because they are not manipulative. They're actually just very integrative and transparent. They're just jerks.
Wow. That yeah, and so that is probably very fascinating just to dial into that population and like I don't know. Yeah, that's so interesting. And so I'm sure there was like a lot of like you had to check your transference, counter transference, and like that really probably tuned you up and that self awareness piece and being present and checking your own notions of things like oh
It helped moving forward when working with clinical populations that maybe they have a lot of guilt and they have a lot of shame and they want to share some of the worst things that they've done. A big part of my clinical population, or the people that I work with, are veterans, particularly Vietnam era veterans. They've killed people. I don't know how else to say it. They have done some pretty abhorrent things by most people's standards, and they don't really want to be able to talk about some of these things, especially when it was maybe not their best moment, or they did something that might have been illegal or wrong. And I get to tell them, like, my bar is pretty high for that. And I think they get it when I was like, no, I worked with psychopaths for 2 years. Like, it's pretty hard to move my needle on, oh, that's so morally irreprehensible. How dare you?
right.
Because
Yeah.
I've read narratives that got people in, I mostly worked with the development of psychopathic traits. So these were mostly children and adolescents, but I worked with them in detention facilities, some of them sexual offender facilities, some of them general offender facilities, some of them very high, severe level. And I'm not going to, I certainly won't share some of these gory details on your
Sure.
lovely show, but the content is quite morbid.
I can only imagine. Wow. And taking that with your military, because I've heard that, and I've counseled some people that are in the military, and from my reading, and there can be a lot, like you said, a lot of guilt over moral quandaries.
Mhm.
They have to obey orders, and the violating their own conscience.
Oh yeah.
That's probably a big part of that,
And the enemy used that against us. They would strap weapons to women and children and have them charge forward operating bases, forcing them to do something that most humans would consider morally reprehensible. And
wow.
that they can't do their job anymore because they're traumatized. So
Yeah.
the insurgents win. They
Wow.
wrestle with that for the rest of their lives.
That's powerful stuff. And
Mhm.
then you also being in the military, the lingo, you can get you can the
There's a
language.
lot of it. I don't know half of it.
I'm sure there is it goes deep, that rabbit hole. But
Mhm.
I bet that has helped just get them to open into you a little bit, and for that. So um
Yeah, it helps. There's a lot of acronyms in the military, and
mhm.
it's really funny that you can be in so long that you know what the acronyms stand. You know what the acronyms mean, but you couldn't tell that you couldn't actually say what the words are if you if you spread them out.
Yes. Yes, that is you get yes, you know what they mean. The gestalt
Mhm.
of the
The gestalt of it,
yeah,
absolutely.
yes, I got you. Uh so has there ever been a point where you've been disillusioned? And have you ever questioned your do I really want to do this for the rest of my life, or have you been like, no, this is it? Like, has the field psychology and mental health has there's all sorts of controversies and landmines that you can step on all in all sorts of ways. I don't know, have you ever dealt with any of those feelings?
I have certainly had my fair share of friction as a student, as an early career practitioner, but there has never been a moment in direct patient care when I'm actually in a chair and I'm sitting across another person in a chair where I've never thought, this is where I want to be for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear a lot of my peers, a lot of my colleagues, they maybe have, moments where they don't want to do it, or, it's costing too much. I have found myself remarkably resistant against the burnout in this field.
Mm-hmm.
Been doing it for 13 years. Haven't really taken a break yet. Still gasses me up every time I do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the actual direct patient care of this work, the actual work in this work, I love. What's disillusioned me has been training, policy, documentation. The VA, there was a tough chapter in the VA where they were really focusing more on documentation than direct patient care.
Yeah.
As evidenced by they had a 30-page suicide inventory that if a veteran indicated that they have, even not if they're actively suicidal, if they
Mm-hmm.
have ever at any point in time had any suicidal thought whatsoever, we stop the direction of the care and we have to bring out this 30-page document to just cover the legal risk of the hospital to say that we've done it. But really, what
Right.
we need to be doing is closing the book and saying, you're in pain. Let me sit with you while you're in pain. Nope, can't talk about that anymore. We have to do this 30-page documentation thing that the VA requires of you.
Oh.
These are the things that have disillusioned me in the career. Like, I'm trying to actually sit with someone right now, not waste 4 hours writing down this 30 pages. We whittled it down to
That's
11, but
wow.
we had to petition Washington, D.C. to roll back 30 pages to 11.
And that just totally kills the creative moment. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
or
could
just
totally see.
supporting somebody who needs some support in that moment.
Right, because that's such a potent, that's such a potent moment when that
Mm-hmm.
gets disclosed, and the liability, and everybody's trying to cover their own butt.
CYA.
All
Yep.
the, yeah, I can definitely understand that, and that's probably people are much more, I guess, probably on edge about that in the VA system in that sense.
Yes.
Um,
The so one of the difficult things, often are emergency rooms in VA hospitals unless you're in a
mhm,
community-based outpatient clinic. So if somebody indicates that they're suicidal, you could walk them into the emergency room in that moment. Now, I am a lot more conservative with my involuntary hospitalizations than most of my peers, because most of my
mhm,
peers were like, I would rather be safe than sorry. And I would rather treat them like human beings. And unless they are saying, no, I'm going to go home right now and hurt myself, I'm not, I'm going to trust what they tell me.
mhm,
And I'll say, would you like me to walk you down to the emergency room? We actually do have a great, process and a great team there who's going to take care of you.
mhm,
And some of them have said, yes, I need that right now. And I would walk with them and it would be a warm handoff. I'd be like, hi, this is,
mhm.
so-and-so.
It's I'm glad you say that. I work at a college, and so I'm one of the head one of two counselors for about 1,200 students, and so especially in this, I guess, Gen Z, I want to off myself. The language is of around it's so much more casual, thrown around, and what I view is a lot of the times more symbolic of an expression of,
Mhm.
they're not, the means and intent aren't really there, but I see my colleagues in faculty, they get all like bent out of shape when they hear those words, and I'm like, I take that more human approach of, hey, like we'll walk you down, and yeah, we can go down to MCP, the
Mhm.
MCPD is what we call the police department. We can go, they can get you to the hospital if we want. It's very, we have a good process for that, but a lot of times they just want to be heard, and that's like it's a symbolic gesture, and like you said, you're
Yeah.
really in pain right now, and like I'm here with you on that, and
I,
that has, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting you. I don't mean to
Oh
cut off your train of thought, but I
no.
really love that. I really love the use of symbolic to describe this, because
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, most people, even when they're talking about suicide and suicidal ideation, they don't want to die. They want their pain to end. And
Yes.
and so that as they talk about, their suicidal thoughts, or even the morbid fantasy on how they would do it, it is often symbolic of the pain and the pain that they want to end. And I want to create the space for that. And I don't think a lot of people, I'm going to rephrase this. I think the parlance or the language that people use is that they're getting attention, or that they're maybe like just being a little histrionic. I don't
Mm-hmm.
usually hear that language, but I hear that, oh, they're just getting attention, or they're just trying to
Yes.
get. Well, when you're in pain and you're screaming for help, that in
It's like,
many
yeah.
ways is getting attention. This is symbolic of something deeper. And I
Mm-hmm.
say this because I've survived many suicides in my personal life. In fact, even if I were to limit this to just my army peers, I have
Mm-hmm.
lost more army peers to suicide than to small arms fire or to combat.
Wow.
It is, we actually, in the most recent conflicts, OAF, OIF, OND, we actually have lost more of those veterans to suicide than to combat, and it is devastating. They don't often cry for
Really?
attention. They
Wow.
smile. They show up and they interact with their family. They hug their friends. They hug their wives, and then they go into a car and they kill themselves. So they're not, when they want to, when somebody wants to die, they will. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody wants to talk about it, you need to create the space to have them express the some symbolism of their pain. If you dismiss
Mm-hmm.
it, if you pull out a 30-page you know, document instead of listening to their pain, they're going to go, nobody gives a crap. They might actually go home and do something about it
Mm-hmm.
without telling anyone, because
Wow,
who's going to
that's
listen?
yeah, that's I guess I never considered suicide is taking more of our veterans than some of the combat experiences.
we
That's
we
so
we have
powerful.
not
Wow.
lost as many soldiers in this in our most recent conflicts to combat as other conflicts. Like, you look at the Vietnam War, you look at World War One, World War Two, the Korean War. These
Mm-hmm.
are huge numbers of just traditional warfare. These conflicts have been asymmetrical warfare, non-traditional. A lot of it is more policing than, like, we have to stop a standing army. The war in Iraq was like that for about
Yeah.
2 weeks. We won that war in 2 weeks. The rest of
Mm-hmm.
it was a police action. The Iraqis did not have a standing army. I think by the end of 3 weeks into that, they didn't have uniforms anymore. Like, they were stripping their uniforms and they were hiding in the crowds. They're like, there's no army anymore. There's no military anymore. We won.
Wow. That's powerful stuff. The the one resource I bring just sticking on suicide for a sec is the hero's journey, and at the bottom
Mhm,
of the is the death and rebirth. And sometimes I like to talk about, like, there's parts of you that might want to die.
mhm,
And that has led to some very interesting conversations. It's like, I'm hearing that maybe there's parts of you that is trying to go here and to make space to rebirth into on the other side of the journey, and that has led to some very interesting conversations.
mhm. Oh yeah, I'm really glad that you brought Joseph Campbell into this, because
Mm-hmm.
I do look at the hero journey for sort of my conceptualization of the trauma journey, because I don't think that PTSD is the end state of trauma. It's usually sort of this roundabout stuck point of maladaptive coping patterns where you actually put yourself in a position to continue being traumatized
Mm.
repeatedly. And
Mm-hmm.
once you get off of that on ramp, it's usually resilience and growth and transformation, personal strength, belief in new possibilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But what Joseph Campbell would say, well, the narratively, that would be the nadir, the low point.
Yes.
And then once you get beyond the nadir, you're going up again, and what you're transforming it's the difference between recovery and growth. Recovery is to get yourself back to where you used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The growth journey is now you are integrating that and you're more than you were before. And I do
Yes.
think that that parallels very well with the monomyth, the hero's journey,
Yes.
the what I it's a big part of the trauma, but people need to see that there's a part after that. There's a part after that dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of our clinical language, a lot of our clinical language just doesn't do that justice. You have to pull in from, the geniuses of literature, like,
Mhm,
Campbell, and storytelling, and I think that is so powerful.
mhm. Oh
No, I'm.
yeah. Oh gosh, the our field is really just 125 years old, 200 tops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, we can look. People have talked about this since time immemorial. On X earlier today, a gentleman who I respect, who's an expert, he's specifically a trauma therapist. He works with trauma PTSD. Was saying that trauma is a relatively new field, and I pushed back. I said it's the main theme of the Iliad.
Yeah, yes, I did. I saw that reply. I actually saw that.
Mm-hmm. And I
Yes.
didn't mean to be rude about it, but I sincerely
Mm-hmm.
there is nothing new under the sun in psychology. We've conceptualized it, we've studied it, we've measured
Mm-hmm.
it, we've been able to create these cohesive constructs that allow us to talk to each other, like diagnoses, major depressive
Mm-hmm.
disorder versus a social anxiety disorder. But
Mm-hmm.
the Greeks talked about melancholia.
Oh.
The their most forms of philosophy, even sophistry, the applied
Mm-hmm.
philosophy
Yes.
in ancient times was to move people along and get them through some of their stuck points. The
Mm-hmm.
earliest experience of psychotherapy in written word would likely be Socrates and the Sophists.
Yeah. That's. I don't know if you've ever heard of Emmy Van Duren. She's a
No, I haven't.
she's a British existential. I guess she's really popular in the UK.
Okay.
And she talks. She essentially takes the whole Western canon of philosophy and she brings that forth as that's her like a philosophical based therapy. And she talks
Hmm.
about from Plato, Aristotle, the Stoics,
Hmm.
the Romantics. All of them
Hmm.
have a they're pointing to a certain particular aspect of the human condition, and she's all about like developing this kind of wisdom in integrating that into modern day psychology too. And so she's really I've been on her stuff for a while and I've
Heck
loved
yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, what a lot of people who don't study history may not be aware of is that before all of these big schools of Greek philosophical thought, when it really was a bunch of, muscular Plato was a wrestler. Plato is
Yeah.
actually Greek for broad. It was a nickname.
Yes.
It was not his actual name. He was a very successful wrestler. So he was just a really buff dude.
Mm-hmm.
But they walked door to door asking if they could solve people's problems with logic. Like that they literally would be like, "Can I solve your problem today using rhetoric and
Yes.
logical traps?"
Yes. Oh, I love that. And you bring up a good point of I think being a good therapist actually has a really good connection to tradition, anthropology, history. I think that actually makes I think that just makes for a more well-rounded therapist, in my
Uh,
opinion.
you guys might see this big colorful band here. Those are all history books. Let's see.
Yes.
This is American military history, or at least of the West.
Uh
Oh
huh.
yeah, a lot of these are philosophy. No, I think this is German poetry. A lot of my whole
Mm-hmm.
Freud collection is all on this shelf. Unfortunately, the camera's not picking it up, but
Yeah.
this is probably filled with as much history and philosophy as it is psychology.
And I think it all ties in, and I think that's how you really cultivate true wisdom to help people walk through these things. And it's like it's kind of refreshing to be like, well, there have been lots of men before us and women that have thought
Hmm.
up these things through and contemplated these, and so these problems are they're workable, and I
Hmm.
think there's a lot of hope in that actually.
Absolutely. That was actually one of Freud's bigger theses. He says that therapists need to go out in the world and study things and study fields and theories and research unrelated to psychology or behavior. He
Mm-hmm.
was fascinated with anthropology. That was his, or archaeology. He was really into archaeology.
Yes. Yes.
Hence, all of his metaphors about digging into the unconscious and bringing and carrying it into the conscious. But if you were to actually see his knickknacks in the Freud Museum, he has knickknacks. He has little collections and figurines from archaeological digs all over the world because that was his hobby. That was his recreational interest that he combined into his art or into his science. And he
Yes.
encouraged others to do the same.
And you brought up the R word, which I think is a good recreation, which I think is going to be a
Mhm.
good segue. Is I'm curious, Dr. Perin, you put a lot of time and effort and will into this work of helping other people.
Hmm.
How do you balance that with play, leisure, recreation? What's your sense on all of that?
Well, this has been my hobby since I was a kid. There was a moment where I was a young man. My dad read a lot. My mom had a lot of, smutty romance novels. And there was a moment where I had to read everything that we had in the house. And, once we ran out of books in the house, I started going to libraries. So I spent a lot of time with my nose in a book, which helps
Mm-hmm.
for tweeting because if I get someone, rage baiting me or a hater, I can be like, all right, bookmark, get back to my book. It
Yeah.
also really helps with my practice because if I have a client who brings up an issue or, is struggling with something that I may not have the most information about, I either have a book or I can rent a book or I could buy a book on it and I'll consume all of that content so that when I next meet them, I'll be a little bit more prepared or equipped for the work that I do. But I do need to
Yeah.
get my head out of the work every once in a while. I think
And
that's what you're really asking about.
well, no, I think that's the reading, and I think it speaks to like you're willing to pull from different sources, history. You said poetry.
Oh yeah. Oh,
There's
fantasy novels. I am a sucker for like swords and wizards and there are some that are like 11 or 20 volumes long and
mm-hmm.
I'll read as many of them I can until the story dies, until they jump the shark.
Yeah. You you talk about like physical health. You get
Mhm.
into all, spats all the time about them. Are you do you hit the weight room yourself? Do you
Mhm.
have a sport or anything you partake in?
Well, growing up, I'm a Midwesterner, so the Midwestern sports are hockey or street hockey, depending on what time of year it is. So, that's what the boys played around the neighborhood. They made me the goalie because I could take a puck to the head and shrug it off. A little bit of macho-ness.
Yeah.
But, I've had my brother was more in the baseball league. We were both in soccer league. Like they're
Uh-huh.
like we've always been there's always been a lot of movement. I was a Boy Scout, a lot of outdoorsy stuff, running,
Yeah.
jumping, cutting stuff with knives and axes, super great.
Mm-hmm.
Guns too, which has not made me very popular in the therapy sphere, but in Ohio, especially the Ohio farming culture, that's what we do. We have
Yeah.
coyote season 365 days a year.
Yes.
We need to shoot the coyotes. So we
Mm-hmm.
become proficient in firearm usage. And then I go into the big city to go to graduate school, and they're saying no one should have it under any circumstances ever. And I'm like, highly rural farm people have different needs than
Oh,
maybe you
yes.
city folk. But I've always had an active lifestyle. I've always
Mm-hmm.
done stuff. When I was in graduate school, I gained about 30, 40 pounds, just stress, work. It's a
Mm-hmm.
sitting job. So, we'd sit on the bus to get to a classroom, or we'd sit in a chair, and then we'd get on another bus to go home, or we'd sit on or go to a library where we'll sit on another desk. And
Right.
so when I completed my academics and I went on into the full-time internship and my postdoc, I hit the weight room to lose all of that weight. And
Mm-hmm.
gosh darn it, it just gassed me up so much. It was hard to stop. I mean, I have a little weight room in my basement, a little bit of a home gym, but
Yeah.
I love actual gym culture. Like you go
Yes.
to a gym, there's like fraternity, there's fellowship, even
Mm-hmm.
people who have earbuds in their ears and you actually never say a word to them. When you go to the gym, you tend to go at the same time or on the same days, and you do it
Yes.
long enough, you start seeing people, you start recognizing, you get like the up nod or
The up
the
nod.
or
Yeah.
whatever. You never know their names, but you start like passing by each other's and you'll fist bump, and it'll just be the most natural, encouraging
Mm-hmm.
thing ever. You can't get that out of a home gym. I
That's
love
true.
the gym culture. I love the fellowship.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's I think that's an unspoken when people say like, "Oh, go to the gym for depression." People get caught up on the weightlifting, but there's a lot that goes into
Oh, it's a
just
community.
that whole
Even if you go to
endeavor.
another gym and you know the rules or you know the culture, you're welcome there. You're treated well there.
Yes.
Mostly.
No. Well,
I'm a
you
big
could.
fan of Joey Swole. He likes to share
Yes.
negative examples on his social media platform.
Yes, I've seen some of his videos before. He's pretty.
Mhm.
That's a great concept for.
Oh yeah.
um, and is that his real name, Joey Swole? Because what a what a
That would
name
be a
for
really
his.
funny coincidence, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
I had read a funny study that you're more likely to get into a job or live on a street if it's related to your name or your profession. So like I'm more likely to live on a therapist avenue, or there's actually a Cardigan Avenue in my town, and I'm weirdly drawn to living on Cardigan Avenue.
That's
Yeah.
so funny. Yeah, that is. I've always thought about like names. Like there's certain people. It just feels like their name is like they live into it. I don't know
Mhm.
what comes first, the
Oh yeah. If
association with the name or they live. I
if
don't.
his
Yeah.
name actually was Swole, I would not be surprised that he got really buff.
Right. It's yes. There's something about that. I love
Right.
that. I love that.
Well,
Um.
I guess I want to say one more thing about the recreation though, because this is something that I think more people can connect with. It doesn't get a lot of attention, but it's a competitive outlet. Like I'm competitive.
Oh.
I want to be
Same.
like I'm competitive, but like I get excited when I'm competing. There are
Mm-hmm.
some board game nights that I have been uninvited to because I was out for blood. But like
Yes.
this is something that like animates me. Like I'm like, yes, I love a good competition. And that's why I like sport. I don't
Mm-hmm.
actually care too much about what the sport is so long as we're competing. It could be air hockey. I'm going to be the most competitive person there. But
Mm-hmm.
if I am disconnected from that, if I am not connected with a competitive outlet in my life, I suffer. I
Yeah.
genuinely need to go out of my way to make sure that I'm competing. So I'm 40 now. I can't sort of run, jump. I think I was playing kickball not too long ago, and I was trying to like steal a base, or I was sliding when everyone else is like, "What are you doing?" I learned really quickly that I can't probably be putting my body into those positions the way I did when I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. So
Right.
I
You've got
find
to
like
adapt.
competitive gaming or entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
growing a social media following, things that
X
can tap
is
me
a bit
into.
of yes. X can
Well,
be competitive in that way.
what I find competitive about X is not the people but the metrics. So I don't
Yes.
know if you've actually gone into the Twitter metrics. I think it's still called Twitter metrics. It hasn't
Mm,
quite transferred over to X metrics yet. It tells you how many people are engaging, how many people are liking, retweeting, commenting, etc. So it's a whole bunch of numbers. And
mm-hmm.
so I look at that and I see how the numbers change. And I go, okay, how can I get more of that? What can I do? Okay, this strategy works with this one. This strategy works with this one. So I'm really getting into the strategy. I'm really getting into the tactics of it. And
Yeah.
I'll apply a theory and it'll either, stagnate or it'll explode. And I'll go, okay, let's do that. It's
Yes.
how I've sublimated this competitive component of myself. This part of me that used to be, uh, cartwheeling across like high high rise like obstacle courses to get through it faster. Like I can't
Mm-hmm.
do that anymore.
Yes, there is a physical. That's just a reality. It's true. And so you've got
Uh-huh.
to adapt, and you've got to. I think that's where the creativity comes in. Of like, okay, how can I still scratch this
Hmm.
itch,
Hmm.
in a way that's sustainable, that won't end me in the hospital, and then you're really out of commission, and
Oh
that's when you
yes.
really, that's when you can really suffer from that.
Yeah,
And
I bet you,
you
and
just
when I'm
hit.
80, I'm going to be making up games at the old folks home for us to be
Oh,
competing against. Whatever old man flip cup's going to be.
yeah. I love that. I love that. No, I'm a competitor. I've been a tennis player all my life. I've played all through college. Pickleball
That's
has recently
competitive.
table tennis. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And
if you're not good at tennis, you are not going to compete in tennis. Like you have to be good at like
you
there is a skill, that is a learning curve. There's a like skill gap
yes.
in tennis.
Yes. Absolutely. I remember I lived out on a small farm. My dad he transformed half of the barn into just like a wall that I could hit on and just go. I was just like determined
Mm-hmm.
to like get better. And no, that's a good point. Competition, I think that's, and it plays into fraternity, sportsmanship,
Mm-hmm.
uh, character development. I mean,
Well,
there's
yeah,
so much that goes
aliveness,
into it.
vitality.
Vitality, and I love that. I saw you made a tweet one time about vitality, and that's something that I kind of I improvise on. I try to when I'm conceptualizing my work with these college students, I'm really have a sense about their vitalityness, if they're
Mm-hmm.
shrinking their existence or if they're being vital and flourishing and
Mm-hmm.
expanding themselves.
But
Yeah.
I think that that's so unique to a person. So I mentioned my competitive outlet. There are some people where that for them it's a maybe a creative outlet or an expressive
Mm-hmm.
outlet or a social outlet. It could be like what gasses me up is I need to hang out with my pals. Like it's Friday night, I've been working hard, I need to go out and dance. Like
Mm-hmm.
you get a you need to find out what your outlet is that gives you vitality because gosh, once you're working, once life gets routine, once you're really squeezed, maybe you have children and parents and a job,
Mm-hmm.
you go, oh well, I don't need to do my I don't need to do my billiards, my weekly billiards night anymore, or I don't need, or I'm gonna give up painting. I'll get back to photography maybe in 10 years. It's not that important anyway. No, those
Mm-hmm.
are what gave you vitality. You need to
Yes.
like shoehorn those into your routine so that you're gonna have
Yes.
more energy to do the mundane.
Mm-hmm. Our our college has a master's program, physical physician's assistant.
Mm-hmm.
They call it PA for short.
PAs, yeah.
It's a very tough 2 year program, and all of them, they're the type of people that they're a little on the perfectionist side, and they're kind of the top of their class for their undergrad. They get to PA, they're all of a sudden they're average, and boy do they white knuckle their academics. They reduce themselves down to just studying, and I can't go to the gym because I need to put more time into the books, and I'm sitting here trying to drop the seed and persuade them of like, if you just trust me on this, if you close the books, go to the gym, and then prove it to yourself that you can still get that same grade.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if I can get people to trust that one time, they're like, "You're so right," and I'm so glad you did that because I feel myself again.
Mm-hmm.
I feel more human. And,
I
and
I I see this in the context of new parents a lot. I really want to highlight that idea though, because
mm,
when you have a new child, intellectually, well, my baby's needs come first. If I leave them alone, they're gonna die. So I'm not gonna go out with my friends. I'm not gonna sleep for 8 hours. I'm not gonna, I can eat McDonald's for the first, 18 months of this kid's life. Uh,
yes.
and I see this with fathers too, but I think it's almost universal with new mothers, where
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell them like, go out, have a spa day, mani pedi, hang out with the
Mm-hmm.
girls, get some
Yes.
margs. Your battery is going to recharge. When your battery is recharged and you come home and you hold your child is going to interact with you at a fully charged battery.
Mm-hmm.
When your child is interacting with you at a drained battery, that child is not getting the best of you. In fact, you're going
Mm-hmm.
to be like, oh, why are you still crying? What's going on? And that energy, emotions are porous, especially with your newborns. So, that
Yes.
energy is going to become circulated. And when your child's, temperament is messed up, your temperament's going to get messed up, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
No, give the child to grandma, get a babysitter, recharge your batteries. So the actual quality of the time that you are spending with your child is better. You're both going to have a better emotional experience.
Yes.
I absolutely see that parallel with your work output or your academic output or
That's their
really
child.
anything you're trying to crush. Yeah, you
Yes.
need to make sure that the time that you're spending at that task is optimal. Because if you're doing
Yes.
that at a drained battery, you could do an all-nighter. How good is that all-nighter going to
Mm-hmm.
do? And if you rested and then started the paper.
And yes, that's. Do you find that, is it a bit of a struggle to get them to try to adopt that new strategy sometimes of,
Mhm.
because they have a lot of anxiety about like, but my child needs me, my studies need me, and it's almost like they have to have a leap of faith to
Mhm.
even prove to like even logically they can understand what you're saying and they agree, but you have to experience it to get it sink into your bones.
Yeah. Well, that's why advice isn't the mechanism of change in psychotherapy. If
Mm-hmm.
you worked with an alcoholic and you told them, "Hey, just don't drink beer anymore," that's correct. That is the accurate advice, but
Mm-hmm.
that is missing a very important component there, which is that they have to have an encounter. They have to look into the mirror. They
Yeah.
have to actually wrestle with some difficult stuff, and that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We have to wrestle with it, and they have to wrestle it, and they have to hold their child after they haven't slept for 3 days, and they need to be going, why aren't they crying? I wish I could shake this. Maybe that's what the therapist was talking about.
Yes.
And you just hope that they have that moment, but it
Mm-hmm.
can't be spoken. It can't be intellectualized. It has to have that 2 foot drop. They have to actually feel it.
Yes. The 2 foot drop. I like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. Well, I know you said 8:30 about I want to respect your time here, but this has been an awesome conversation.
Yeah.
I really
Time
appreciate
flew,
it.
man. I was having fun.
I mean, if I have a couple more questions if you want to keep it rolling, but no, we can. I think it's a this is a good. I appreciate you laying out some of your career trajectory, kind of how you got to where you are today, and also sharing some of that insight about recreation because again, I think there's a lot of in terms of psychological well-being, a lot of that is happens in the work sphere and then also in the play sphere, leisure and
Mhm.
recreation, and I think those play hand in hand, and so
Oh yeah. Work is deliberate play. If you can't play, you can't work.
yes. Mm-hmm. No, I totally get that. I love that. Um, okay, anything else?
No, Spencer, honestly, this has genuinely been a delight. I wish I could stay longer. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you for
well,
inviting me.
maybe we will. Yes, and by the way, I'm a novice at this media, and I think you're kind of you're somewhat new in this video world, and so I think we're kind of walking this a little bit together here, and I appreciate that. And maybe we'll collab again in the future.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. Take
Take care,
care.
man.